Shalom, Shalom, Israel, Shalom. It's your brother Isaiah, man, brother Denal, brother Obadiah, coming at you with another Soul Food Sunday. And today's topic, man, is really just examining First John 3 and 16. Before we move any further, man, we want to give all praises, glory, and honor to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Um, we also want to say shalom to the viewers who's going to tune in live and following the live. Shalom to the cleavers, man. Shalom to all the brothers out there on the highways and byways laboring and putting a brick in for the Lord, man. We want to say shalom to the sisters of those husbands, right, holding down the household, being great helpmeets, man, uh, building up themselves in the spirit in the name of the Lord, right? Um, the thing that I want to ask is the brother Denal could pull up the blowing of the shofar, and that can help us, you know, set the stage for just a quick, brief conversation. Because tonight's lesson is not long. We really not leaving John at all. We'll be in First John a lot, and then we'll be in the Book of John maybe for like a precept or two. But it's not really many things that we're gonna across the Bible bring out, right? I want to say disclaimer, this is not necessarily a full breakdown of the verse and how to rebuttal against the whole Trinity, I guess you could say, doctrine, right? This is just a quick, simple understanding of how to, examine this verse, how it reads, how you should use it in when it comes to grammatical understanding, right? How you should view it when it comes to grammatical understanding, and how you should be responsible for the text as a reader. So after the blowing of the shofar, we can get right into the scriptures. We don't even got to hesitate. But most high willing, everybody had a good first day of the week. For those who labored today, at your job, or for those who just, got some other things taken care of because your job only requires you to work Monday through Friday. Hopefully it was a pretty productive day for you. And if it wasn't, hopefully tomorrow will be, if it be the Lord will for us to see it. Right. But let's play this shofar, man, and after that, let's get into this word.
You might not be able to hear it. Let me know though.
I can't hear it. You might have to share a tab audio. Good. Con, man. So with that being said, let's get straight into the Bible, right? Um, let's pull up the book of First John, chapter 3, and verse 16. So the reason that I want to examine this, man, because I was on TikTok one Sabbath and I was listening to a brother's live, and he was bringing out some information, man, and I was listening. Then he went into veering in the topic of why he believes, who the world calls Jesus Christ is the Most High God, and this is one of the verses he went to. So I was, responding in the comments and trying to help him understand what saith this verse. And realistically, I know that I told the brother I was going to DM him. I think I did DM him. I'm just waiting on him to DM me back. But nonetheless, again, like I said, this is not a full breakdown of First John 3 and 16. This is not a full in-depth analysis of how to combat, the topic of Jesus being the Most High God. This is just one verse that could be used to support that doctrine. And this is one, I guess you could say, this video is just covering maybe an angle or an approach that you could take to help explain this verse, right? And why it makes sense to support the foundation of our belief at the hopeful elect, which Jesus Christ is not the Most High God. But let's read First John 3 and 16.
First John.
Yeah, First John. Yeah, not the typical John 3 and 16, right? We're gonna be in First John 3 and 16.
This is First John chapter 3 and verse 16. It says, "Hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren."
You sound low.
Yeah, you sound low all of a sudden. Read that again. You good, brother? You just sound low all of a sudden.
First John 3 and 16, it says, "Hereby perceive we that the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren."
Right, man. So this is the verse, the Trinitarian argument, right? 9 times out of 10, if somebody believes in a Trinity doctrine, they believe that Jesus Christ, well, is in fact the Most High God, and they believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? They will try to focus on the phrase when it says he laid down his life for us. And their argument will be that, one, only the Most High God has the authority to lay down his life and take it up again, right? And why do we say that? Let's go to the book of John chapter 10 real quick. John chapter 10 and verse 18. Let's go to John 10 and 18. And Obadiah, if you can read John 10 and 18 when the brother pulls it up.
This is the book of John, chapter 10 and verse 18. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father.
Right. So they'll quote this verse and say that the Most High only has the authority to lay down his life and take it up again. So therefore, pursuing to First John 3 and 16, what they will say is that the he in First John 3 and 16, when it says because he laid down his life for us, they'll say the he in that verse who laid down his life must be the Most High God, right? Since, and I'm gonna say since, S-I-N-C-E, this act defines the very, I like to say what they say, the very nature. I think that's one of the words they love to use, right? The very nature of God's love. Hereby we perceive the love of God. They'll say it's an action of the Most High himself. So that's why it proves that Jesus is the Most High, because they're saying that hereby we perceive the love of God. It's an action of the Most High, right? But that doesn't make sense. And we're going to go back to First John 3 and 16 to explain why it doesn't make sense, right? So the first understanding of this is the immediate context of the verse, right? Context means with the text. So let's gain context as to what this verse is talking about. Let's go back to First John chapter 3 and 16. Brother Denal, if you could read it one more time. But what was you going to say?
No, I was just about to read it.
Oh, okay, Carl, go ahead.
The book of First John chapter 3 and verse 16, it says, "Hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren."
So the first thing we must understand in this verse is who is the he? Who is the he, right? And the pronoun, and I looked this up, it says the pronoun he refers to the nearest prior masculine antecedent, right? Or antecedent, right? The context make the subjects clear. The context make the subject clear. Now, what is an antecedent? Brother Denal, could you pull that up in the Google definition? It's spelled ANTECEDENT. ANTECEDENT. Now, again, this goes back to sometimes when we read the Bible, right? Precept upon precept, line upon line upon line, here a little and there a little, like Isaiah 28, 9 through 10 says. But you also have to understand that when there are things being read a certain way, all the precepts in the world may not help the reader understand the context because they don't understand how the English language works. So sometimes we have to go into the grammar of the English language to help us understand why things say what they say, especially the King's English or the Old English, right? Either way it go, you can get the same answer that people get from reading the precepts. Going into the language will help you better understand as a reader, right? It'll only make you a better scholar, like a lot of people like to say. But let's read what this definition means.
Antecedent. It says a thing or event that existed before or logically precedes another.
Right. Let's read the second definition of that.
Preceding in time or order, previous or pre-existing.
Right. Preceding in time or order, previous or pre-existing. Right. Let's keep that in mind. So it says the pronoun he refers to the nearest prior masculine antecedent, the prior existing one. Right. So let's go back to 1 John and let's go back to chapter 3. But what we're going to do is make it big because we're going to read verses 3. 1 John chapter 3. We're going to read verses 8 and 5. And then we're going to go to 1 John chapter 2. So let's read 1 John chapter 3, verses number 8. And then we'll read verse number 5 following.
It's 1 John chapter 3, starting at verse number 3. And every man.
Salakia, verse number 8.
8?
Yes, sir. 8.
8, verse number 8. It says, he that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil.
Right. For this purpose, the Son of the Most High God was manifested, right? That he might destroy the works of the devil. Who is the he? Again, the he is referring to the Son, because he was the one that was manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil, right? Let's read verse number 5 in this same chapter.
Verse number 5, it says, and ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin.
Again, he was manifested. Who was manifested, right? Let's read 1 John 2 and 22. We're reading all these verses to make a point, to make a singular point, right? And it's clear as day if you truly understand how certain phrases, sentences, and certain grammatical, I guess you could say, what's the word? It's, for lack of a better word, why certain things are in their grammatical position, right? Why are certain things said before others? Why is certain words placed there? How is this word used in the sentence? So that's why we have grammar. That's why there's a whole understanding of English language arts, so we can understand the grammar and how things read. Let's read 1 John 2 and 22 though.
1 John 2 and 22, it says, who is a liar, but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ, he is antichrist, that denieth the Father and the Son.
Right. So pretty much, man, the entire context of 1 John, right, especially in chapter 3, but specifically in this verse 2 and 22, right, the entire context about 1 John is about the revelation of the Most High God's love through Christ. And it's just that simple, right? Through his Son. That's all it is. The he in 1 John 3 and 16 unambiguously, right? Unambiguously refers to Christ, right? And none else. The verse is not saying necessarily that the Most High laid down his life. Rather, it's saying that, Christ laid down his life, and by his action, we understand how much the Most High God loved us, right? Not necessarily the Most High God got off the throne, died for 3 days, and then rose and then got back on the throne, right? That's not how that works. The he in the verse 1 John 3 and 16 is unanimously, man, or unambiguously is talking about Yahweh Shai, or who the world calls Jesus Christ, right? And I don't think that it's made any clearer when you understand, right, how I guess you could say, again, how grammar works, how the language works. When it talks about the he, you got to know who the he is talking about in context. and throughout the entire context of First John chapter 3, it's literally talking about the Son of God, right? The Son of God, right? Of God. So that's one one approach you could take to, I guess you could say, examining this verse and breaking it down to make it plain upon tables, right? We know as readers, a lot of things are plain to us, but sometimes you have those who it may not be so plain to. So even though this is not necessarily an in-depth breakdown to somebody who's never really viewed it from this point of view, it could be something that opens their eyes to the knowledge of the truth. And that's what our mission is. It's not necessarily to be, I guess you can say, well, let me rephrase that. Our mission is not necessarily to educate those who already know. Our mission is to educate those who don't, right? So that's exactly what I'm saying, that even something simple as reading and understanding the context could help somebody who doesn't know as opposed to somebody who does, right? Because some brothers on the screen could know that all day, every day. But I don't do lessons, and we don't do lessons for each other. We do lessons for the people, right? And that's what our mission is. Now, the second approach we could take to this, the context, right? I talked about the context, the immediate context. But now I use the word grammar a lot in that, I guess you could say, first approach. The second approach we could take is another grammatical and theological point, right? So the action reveals the source. The action reveals the source. So in my little notes tab, right? I asked, AI, what they thought about this was. And it just pretty much gave me a little tab. It said the verse is not making a statement about the essential being of who the world calls Christ. It is making a statement about how the Most High God, right, the Father, how his love was demonstrated to the people. So therefore, it's not necessarily about the being of or the essence of Christ. It's about the love of God and how he manifested his love throughout the world, right? Let's
And
go to first.
essentially, man, it's saying it's kind of saying the same thing that the classic John 3:16 is saying. For
Right.
God so loved the world that he gave his
only begotten son, right? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, it's really no different, man. I think that a lot of times what happens is that as readers, man, especially people who come with the Trinitarian mindset, certain words and phrases, it's a stumbling block unto them because they're reading it with the Trinitarian mindset, right? And I think that people like ourselves who were open to the idea of relearning what we once learned, I don't think I've never really was devout for the Trinity. I don't never really think I was that type of Christian growing up. I think I was just more so I believed in God and I believed in Jesus. But I never really was devout for teaching the idea or understanding that Jesus Christ is the Most High God. I don't think I was never under that understanding. So therefore, my transition into the truth, it was easier for me to read verses like John 3:16. And when I had an Israelite brother break it down, it was easy to understand that, right? The same thing with First John 3:16. It was easy to understand that as a reader because I didn't have a preconceived notion of Christ's essence. So that's why certain things are simple to some people, but to some people, it's like wearing, handcuffs. I always got to reference the lesson that the brother Denal did back in like 2022, man. How we should wear these laws. We should wear the law of God as gold bracelets and not necessarily handcuffs, man. Because to some people, their understanding is like handcuffs. They can't get it, and they can't get them off. They can't get it off of them. But to us, it's like gold bracelets because once we realize something, it's just like, oh, that makes sense now. And it's like wearing that gold jewelry. But it's a lock it for the diatribe. But what I was reading is, man, again, like the brother said, it's simple to First John. I mean, it's simple to the normal John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And this is why, again, the second point that we're making, how to approach or attack this verse when people bring it up, is understanding the grammatical and theological point. The action reveals the source, right? Um, Again, I'm gonna read it one more time just for those who may just be joining in. We're dealing with 1 John 3 and 16. Step one was dealing with the immediate context. Who is the he? Now, step two is understanding the grammatical and theological point of the action reveals the source. And it says this verse is not making a statement about the essential being of Christ. It is making a statement about how the Most High God, the Father, how his love was demonstrated to the people, right? So the mechanism of revelation, right? What does the revelation mean? To reveal. So what is the mechanism of having a revealing moment? It says the Most High God, the Father, he is love, chose to demonstrate and define that love through the sacrificial death of his son. This is explicitly stated a few verses later. Now let's read 1 John chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Because these are little note tabs, man. Little note tabs that kind of put things in a perspective for me, again, in a way that could be explained and the people could be edified. But let's read 1 John 4, 9 and 10.
Verse 9. In this was manifested the love of God towards us, because that God sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. Herein is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins.
Right. The mechanism of revelation. It is showing, right? It is showing how the action reveals the source. The action was the Lord sending his son. Who was the source? The Lord. He's the one who sent his son. So in verse John 3, the context of who is the he is the son. He was the one whose life was sacrificed, right? Not exactly the Most High God. The Most High God sent his son. And the Bible doesn't contradict because, again, line upon line, here a little, there a little. Why would God die or say he died, or John have this, I guess you could say, moment of understanding that God died, but then turn around in chapter 4 and say, well, God sent his only begotten son.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. So again, context. Salaki, you was gonna say something?
Now I was just agreeing, like, that is crazy. It don't make sense.
Right. So that's why, again, the Bible here a little and there a little, also coupled with sometimes you have to go into what these grammatical phrases mean. You sometimes have to go into understanding how to use certain words in context, right? Define what these words mean in grammar. Dig a little deeper than just reading the surface level and then thinking, well, that's the end all be all because it says what it says. Again, a lot of people can be deceived by their own opinion when you don't try to further your studies, right? The Bible tells us in 2 Timothy 2 and 15 to study to show thyself approved, a workman needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You can't rightly divide the word if you don't study, right? And part of studying is not just reading the Bible and understanding the precepts, but also using the tools that we have in today's time to help us further understand the language, because there is a language barrier. The Bible was written, the manuscripts were written in a different language and then translated. So like the brother Denal said at camp yesterday, certain phrases may not read the same. They may not read the same in the Greek as they did in the Hebrew. And that's why we have lexicons like the LXX. That's why we have the Briggs lexicon. That's why we have the Blue Letter Bible. That's why we have the Strong's Concordance. That's why we have grammar. Again, you can use Google, you can use Chat GPT, AI, Ask AI. I mean, we have all these study tools to help us be students of the Bible. So we're doing ourselves a disservice when we try not to do exactly what the Most High God told us to do. And that's to study, right? But again, 1 John 4, and this was manifested the love of the Most High towards us, because that the Most High sent his only begotten Son into the world that we might live through him, right? And living through him means living through his sacrifice, right? Uh, but that's pretty much the knockout punch, you know? There's no way after reading that you could equate that in 1 John 3 and 16 that Jesus is the Most High God, if later on in the same book, right, in chapter 4, verse 9 and 10, it's saying that the Most High sent his Son, right? 1 John 3 and 16 says, we perceive the love of God because Jesus laid down his life, right? But 1 John 4 and 9 explains that the love of God was manifested because God sent his Son, right? So it's not that Christ is the source of the love in his own right, but that he is the perfected. And these are words that, again, when I use my Bible study tools to help me formulate this lesson, he is the perfect manifestation and the agent of the Father's love. You know, again, the love originates with the Most High God, right? Um, like the brother Denar brought out earlier, for God so loved the world that he gave, right? That's John 3 and 16. And that was executed. That love that the Father showed was executed by the Son. So that was the second approach to dealing with that verse, is just showing the grammatical and theological point of the action reveals the source. If you read 1 John 3 and 16, just go to 1 John 4 and 9. And that's really a knockout punch. It can't contradict, right? And they would have, people who take the Trinity's standpoint would have to explain why it says that in 1 John 4 and 9, right? But the last point I wanted to bring out is addressing the authority of the argument from what we read first, which was in John 10 and second, which was in John 10 and 18. So can we go back to John 10 and 18 real quick and read that one more time?
John 10 and verse 18. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father.
Right. Again, you know, when you read this and you read this full verse, there's no way that you can just equate that Jesus is in fact the Most High, right? Because it says, this commandment have I received of my Father. Now, we could go deal with Salaki, can y'all hear me?
Khan.
Yeah.
Oh, Salaki, my screen had went out for a second. But we could deal with the understanding of, like it says, I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. So this verse is really just proving that Christ is obedient, you know, and he has authority given to him by the Most High. He didn't get that authority on his own. It's the same way in the book of Daniel. I want to say that's chapter 7, when it's talking about how, is that Daniel 7? When it's talking about, Salaki, I got to find that verse because it just came to me. Let me see. I want to bring up that verse real quick because I know that let me find that.
What verse you talking about?
It's in Daniel, but I'm trying to remember the exact verse. It goes right with this point, and I can't get it. I can roughly paraphrase it, but it still wouldn't necessarily lead you. It still wouldn't necessarily lead to the point of what I'm trying to bring out. It was saying something to the nature or to the understanding of he was given, to him was given, right, the authority. But I can't remember the exact verbiage of the verse. But I know it's in Daniel. Let me pull this up real quick because
Trying to see if I can find it.
I know it's in Daniel 7.
14.
Yeah, there it is. Daniel 7 and start at 13. Let's read Daniel 7 and 13 real quick. Right? Salakia. I'm sorry. This is off topic. I said we was gonna stay in John and First John, but I thought about that verse, how that goes exactly with it, right? Because authority is what we're talking about.
Con.
Salakia. Y'all hear my son in the background, so Salakia.
Con. Yeah. Right. Daniel chapter 7 verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom.
And read that again, verse 14, right? Emphasize. I want you to emphasize, right? And there was given him. Let's read it again.
And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed.
Right, man. Again, it's the same thing with John 10 and 18. It has to deal with authority. Now, one thing about it is, a lot of people who believe that, I guess you could say, Christ is the Most High. They use certain verses, and they use this too. But one of the things that you got to pay attention to is, one, in this verse, there's two distinct beings, right? Two, one is referred to as the Ancient of Days, and one is referred to one like a Son of Man, right? And then three, you got to understand there was an action. The action was the Son of Man was given something, right? If he is the Most High, he doesn't have to receive it. And who is he receiving it from? Right? So there's the same thing with John 10 and 18, how you got to respect the authority of the Most High God. And what I'm saying, respect the authority is that we pretty much saying that when people try to use 1 John 3 and 16, and then they use John 10 and 18 to explain that's what Christ is, to explain 1 John 3 and 16, they don't understand the authority, right? Again, it's all about obedience. So Christ is being obedient to his Father, right? Because his commandment, I'm saying that backwards. Because after he said nobody has the power, I got the power, then he literally goes on to say, I have received of my Father, right? Jesus, the power to take down his life was a commandment that, one, he received. What is received? By definition, it's a delegated authority. The one who gives the commandment is the ultimate authoritarian. And that person in that verse is, in fact, undoubtedly the Most High God, right? And that verse, it really perfectly aligns with his consistent testimony, right? When he says, I go into the Father, for my Father is greater than I, right? But let's go to John chapter 5 and verse 19, right? Let's go to John 5 and 19, because this is another verse.
John chapter 5 and verse 19, it says, Then answered Yahushua and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise.
Right. Hey, that's just like when Christ said the works that he did, we should do the same and even greater, right? But again, everything that you're able to do, it was received of the Father, right? How can Christ be the Father if he's receiving something from the Father? It just doesn't make sense when you really boil down to it. And that's all I'm saying at the end of the day, is just that even the supreme act of laying down his life was done in obedience to a commandment of his Father, because again, Christ prayed before he was put to death. Christ prayed and said, Lord, let this cup pass from me. But if it's in your will that I gotta go out this way, then hey, let your will be done. And if he was the father, he would have had the authority to say, "No, I'm not laying my life down this way," you know. And it just doesn't make sense. But I mean, all in all, we read a lot of First John 3:16, right? However, it's just that when you read that and you equate that to Jesus being the Most High God, what you're lacking is context, and you're really just butchering the interpretation of it, right? And literally, you were, I guess you could say, omitting the rest of John because you don't go to read First John 4. Again, like we covered, the first way we could approach this verse is just taking them to the immediate context and addressing who is the he, right? And the he in the verse is Christ, the Son. And we can read the chapter just to gain the context of that. And that's not a vague reference to the Father. It literally is the context, and it's undeniably clear. The second approach we took was addressing the grammatical and theological point, right? The action reveals the source. And the verse is just literally a demonstration, not the and the brother Hassad used this word the other day, ontology of the one demonstrating it, right? Um, Again, Christ is literally a revelation of the Most High's love, because, like the brother said in John 3:16, for the Most High so loved the world that He gave His only begotten, right? But not the sole source of it. And like we read in 1 John 4:9, it just explicitly state that the love we see in Christ's sacrifice is in fact the love of the Father who sent Him. And then our last approach that we covered, and this is just me summing everything up for those who may get confused about what's being said. This is me summing everything up and saying that the power that Christ had to lay down his life was a commandment from the Father, right? It was a delegated, right? A delegated authority. If you're the Father, or if you're the Most High God, you can delegate your own authority. You don't have to receive something of another authority, right? And it just was exercised in perfect obedience, right? So, one, the whole essential message that I'm preaching is that 1 John 3:16 does not prove that Christ is the Most High God. Now, on the contrary, when read in context, it literally reinforces that the Father, the Most High God, is the ultimate truth or the ultimate source of love and salvation, and not necessarily the Son, who is the agent, right? Through him, the Son, was the love of the Lord perfectly manifested, right, and revealed. So that's really, a subtle way to kind of deal with 1 John 3. Like I said, it's not necessarily this overwhelming overload of information that you can just go into. It's literally just understanding who the he is, understanding the action reveals the source, and understanding the authority that was given, right? Again, it was given. Like we read in Daniel 7, it was given, right? Christ, in this same verse, hey, authority was given to him, right? So I hope that helps anybody who may come across this, who may have thought about 1 John 3:16, who probably didn't know how to deal with it. But we gave you a little ammunition through the Spirit of the Most High. Most High willing, you were edified. I don't have nothing else to add. The brothers, got anything to add to?
I'll give a little bonus. Because that's the breakdown. All three breakdowns that he gave was plain upon tables. You know what I'm saying? And so if they don't get it after that, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Because it was clear. You know what I'm saying? But a little bonus, man. If they want to play that game, you can play that game right back with them. Because the only stumbling block in this verse, the really catch up, is where it says the love of God. And as we know, if anything is italicized, it's an insertion. So you kind of got to tell them, hey, read it without that inserted of God in there. And you have no choice but to think that it's not talking about the Most High God, but it's talking about Christ because of the verses before it, just like the brother Isaiah said. So you read it, hereby perceive we the love because he laid down his life for us. In context, the verses right before this, 15, 14, 13, is talking about having love for your brethren. And this is clearly showing that it's not really talking about God, but it's talking about Christ laying down his life for his brethren, and we should do the same for our brethren, because it's literally talking about how to show love to your brethren, right? And we know God is the Most High. God is never referred to as our brother, or our brethren, right? He's our Father. You know what I'm saying? But again, man, if they want to play that game, they want to play semantics and all of that stuff, man, you tell them, hey, this word that you're getting hung up on, because it's really the only word in this verse that makes them think that it's talking about God. This really not even supposed to be there. But that's just a little bonus, man.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand that, which we talked about this at VSU when we went last time. Yahweh Shai would be a God. You know, he's not, we don't look at him as the Most High God. But when you read Psalms 82 in verse 6 and 7, when it says, ye are gods. So, I mean, in a sense, we will be technically gods. No, but we're not the Most High God, though. We'll be like gods in the sense of we have a type of authority, or, you know what I'm saying? But
Con, you know, again, man, like the brother said, bonus extra credit, right? Just to help you further prove and hearken down on your point, right? But the word of let the Most High be true and every man be a liar. You know, again, we get on here to edify. We don't get in here to philosophize. So, if anybody's having trouble in dealing with any verse that people try to use that just to say that Jesus is the Most High, man, hit us up, because that's not our understanding. That's not what we teach. And you know, we're more than happy to go through the scriptures. I might make this into a little series, man, the same way we're going to do a little series of a holy people in a pagan world, right? So this may be the series, and it may be titled, you know, our Christ is not God series, right? Jesus is not God series. So stay tuned for more. I might do another one next week uncovering something similar to this topic. But like I said, man, Most High willing, y'all were edified. Want to give all praise, glory, and honor to the Most High God of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And we say shalom. Brother Denal will be back on here with us Tuesday, bringing out the word that the Lord puts on his heart to deliver. So stay tuned, right? But with that, shalom.
Shalom.